Hello everybody, welcome back to Let's Glitch Pokemon Blue, and today we're going to cover the Dry Underflow Glitch, as well as the Celadon Looping Map. This is something I've already shown in Pokemon Yellow, and even earlier in this series, but I'm showing it here again, because the glitch items in this game actually do different things they do in Yellow, and I'm going to cover them in more detail. We're going to cover 50 today, so we're going to jump right into it. To get started, what you want to do is have two tossable items, toss them, and have a stack of 255 of X Special. And X Special is required for this glitch. You'll see though it kind of multiplies, but that's not entirely true because this is the cancel button right here. But it does take up slots, roughly. And if you have items in your bag, it can actually get rid of them. So to prevent that, what you can do is put it at the top of your bag, and then deposit or withdraw from there. And you won't have any problems after that. I don't know why it's gotta ask me a million times if I want to get rid of an item. There we go. Okay, so now, the glitch. What you want to do is toss these items, as I already shown. Those X Specials will multiply, if you will. And at this point, you want to toss as many items to where it will leave you with the amount of items you tossed beforehand. So, since we had two tossable items, and we got two extra slots, we want to make sure we have two X Specials remaining. So we will toss 253, giving us 2. And if we had 3 items, we would want to have 3 X Specials because we'll have 3 slots, and then we'll cover these up like this by switching them. And then we'll have 0, which actually isn't 0. I'm pretty sure it's, 256, as you can see right there. That's not important. What's important is that we can actually move this item. We go over here. We'll now have an expanded item bag, which is what all this is here. We're going to find this nugget here. I'm going to switch out, and then you can just close out. And that's that. We have successfully performed that, and you'll see that we actually shifted position. So that's another indicator there. I can even walk down into this tree. But in the game's eyes, that's actually not a problem. Not abnormal at all. So we could actually go to the left here to get different items. That's not important right now. We're actually going to go over here. You'll see that we'll get different items based on the location we walked to. It's actually the X location of the X coordinate, as you can see. Because going up and down doesn't change anything, as you can see there, for that item. Well, that wasn't a good example because I actually moved over. So you can see, it's still a Pokeflute. Okay, so we keep on moving over. And we'll eventually get into glitch items. Which, starting off, that's not it. This one's it. I'm actually going to save state. Okay, to get started, we have B2F, which you'll see here, does this. Which might look familiar if you watched my Pokemon Yellow series. But yeah, some interesting stuff happens. But it acts like a Pokeball, but it actually breaks out every time. Even though there's no Pokemon there, you can use this in battle, and I believe that it will just try and catch the Pokemon that it'll break out. But since there's no Pokemon there, it throws out all those weird tiles, because the game doesn't know what to do. And then it goes away, which I think is kind of interesting. And it does use the item. As you can see, if I hit use, the quantity goes down. Which is pretty funny. I'm actually going to reload. Okay, moving on. B1F, which is funny. This requires a future video. This can do arbitrary code execution, which I'll abbreviate ACE, ACE. And there's a certain address that it binds to, and I'm just gonna put that in the video, the description. I'm not gonna go into that right now. But you can see it just crashed the game right now, so not very helpful. Okay, moving on. And you think we'd move on to like another BF of some kind, but it's actually just 1F. And for this case, this isn't really gonna do too much. But it crashes there in a really weird fashion. And you'll see on screen, I'll put this throughout the video, that it executes arbitrary code execution, and I'll put the address that it executes in the region. And in this case, it's the VRAM region. And it just gives us a freeze or a crash like this, unless we do it a certain way. But most often, it won't really do much, so not very helpful. The next one is pretty much useless. Not that one. I'm gonna save state. This one here does nothing. Absolutely nothing. Skips a turn in the battle. If you can find a use for this, I'd love to know, because as far as I know, it doesn't do a single thing, even in battle, which I might show at a later time. This one here also does ACE, or arbitrary code execution, in a different region. Not a different region, it's the same region, but a different address. It's slightly different, which is important. It can cause a game to freeze, or crash, as you can see there. We're not going to worry too much about that. Okay, moving on. And if you're good at predictions, you'll know that we'll get 4F next. And 4F is something I showed in Pokemon Yellow, and it actually doesn't work very well in VBA. That's not the reason why I'm doing BGB today. There's actually a different reason for that. I'll show that when I get to it. But for now, we're just going to try and use this. It's not going to do much. As we know, it involves echo RAM, which is something that does not work very well in VBA. And I'll put on screen what it does. But for now, we're just going to move on. So we have 5F. Is going to crash too. A lot of these items just do arbitrary code execution, and I'll put on screen what they do after I get the crash or just get the effect or whatever. So moving on. We do not want to go down. Whoops. 6F? There we go. Not doing much right now. Apparently it runs a code, but it doesn't really do much, because the code just kind of doesn't work, to put simply. Okay, 7F. It acts kind of similar to 4F, but I'm pretty sure 4F is preferred to it, because it does also involve echo RAM, but it's just easier to use 4F, because it involves like the daycare stuff. But 7F will just crash, and you'll see the address on screen now. Now, probably the most important glitch item in this game that I know of, and just simply pretty much everyone knows of, because this is probably one of the most versatile items in this game for arbitrary code execution, and that is 8F. Now you'll see here we're probably just going to crash, just like that. And that's just something for another video. It does so much. It's essentially the equivalent of WSM in Pokemon Yellow, if that doesn't tell you enough. So with that being the case, we're just going to move on, and I'll show 8F at a later time. But now that it crossed my mind, let's grab this item. So I'll show it again. I've already shown this in the Miscellaneous Glitches video in this series, but it's how to keep this item. What you want to do is bring it back up to your normal bag, not in the expanded item bag. You want to fly away, because that's the only way to get out of here, really. Go buy some items. Actually, don't do that yet. Go deposit the item into the PC and then buy some items. Wait a second. Forgot, because technically I have a giant stack, so it's still in there. But we deposited one. That's all we need. I would cut this, but it's just going to be a little shopping trip detour. I think all you need is 2. Pretty sure it's just 2 of them. Let's see. It always seems like there's one item left over. Now you should just toss it. And then you can see the item bag's working. Hit cancel. We'll head back to the PC, withdraw our item, and it'll be in there. There's a few items that's useful for, like the one I grabbed earlier, for the rival effect. I hate when people in PCs do that, they'll just body block you like that. Don't get in your way on purpose. Withdraw. Go through here. See, that's the item I was talking about there for the rival's effect. I got a lot of stuff in here, jeez. It's also important to make sure you don't have too many, because I did that with WSM at one point in Pokemon Yellow, and it was kind of a pain. So we have 8F here, and it's going to do something stupid here. Yeah, so unknown opcode. You probably can't see this screen, but what's interesting, and now that we're here, I can actually modify the code here in BGB. Whoops, you might have heard that, which is fine. We're going to change this. I don't think you can see this, which is fine. And I actually edited it to where I can get rid of the unknown opcode and it will just crash. And what's nice is I can actually just reload my state. Okay, we're back. I heard that you can do that in this emulator, the BGB emulator, that you can kind of modify that and prevent unknown opcodes, but I don't know if that's the best method or what people are talking about. But it works enough for me for right now. So anyway, we're going to move on. We're going to get 9F. And if you remember, 9F was pretty helpful in Pokemon Yellow. And here it doesn't seem to be. But that's not the case. It's actually pretty similar to Pokemon Yellow, to where if I open the start menu here, we can kind of get out of that little trap, if you will. And what it did was save our screen data. And it also allows us to partially escape from battle, which was very helpful if you remember from Pokemon Yellow, one of my parts. I did the rival LLL glitch, which this item was very helpful for that, which can also be used in this game. We're going to move on now. I'm also going to save a state. We're going to move on to 10F, which acts pretty similar to 9F, but there's a little bit of a difference. You can see here we do this weird thing. I can even go into here, and it puts us in a glitch city, which is really interesting. You can also see that it does that weird thing with the characters, which is really odd. but it acts really similar to 9F. But I don't think we can use that. Maybe it works when we're not in battle, but in the overworld it does the Glitch City. I'm not sure. I haven't looked into that. We're gonna move on though. Gonna go on to 11F. 11F is similar to a couple of the items that we've had that do this. They just execute some random address in a certain part of the RAM, the VRAM for that. And like I said, you'll see this on screen. I'm gonna pick up the pace here. We're gonna move on to B4F, which is the next one. No B3F apparently. And you'll see on screen what it does. We're gonna cruise along here. We're gonna get WM. I'm also gonna save state. Unknown opcode. So here, I'm gonna try this again. Work with this here. Do this. Got another one. There's a good chance you can't see this, but I think in a different part I might show this. Okay, there we go. I got rid of the unknown opcode, but you can see we still crashed. It does that weird thing with the top of the screen. That's going to keep doing that, and like I said, you're going to see on screen what it does. I'm going to stop saying that. Like, whenever there's a crash or I move on, you will see what it does. Alright, we're just going to move on to the next one. It's actually a very important item in Pokemon Yellow, but not so much in here, because this is literally all it does in Pokemon Blue. Inside and out of battle. It's not very helpful at all. Even if the box isn't full, I can't really show you now, but my Pokemon box is not full. It just displays this message. Yeah, that's all it does. No point in showing that. Next one here is probably just going to crash the game. Oh, unknown opcode. I highly doubt this is really going to do much, but I'll do this really quick. Give me another one. A lot of unknown opcodes I'm getting over here. And then boom, it just crashes. Yeah, I might have to find a way to show that when the time comes, just to give you an idea of what's going on, what I'm doing. But now's not the time. Alrighty, moving on from VGTM, although technically it's called VTM. That's just part of the gem symbol in there, you can see. It's just really interesting. We're going to move on to DM, which if you've seen Missing No Experts Let's Glitch Pokemon Yellow series, you'll be pretty familiar with this item. It seemed to be useless in there, but it does do something, which you'll see on screen now. You'll also see that it crashed, and it's going to crash. So we're going to move on. Now we'll get M, which just gives us another unknown opcode, which I might start cutting this now because it's just going to give a crash each time, which is kind of silly. We'll get WLM. You'll see on screen and then a cut what it does. Now we'll get FM, which I know this item is usable and can do an interesting effect. It apparently has one really, really obscure benefit. But in this case, and probably anyone else's case, it's really not that useful. As you can see, it makes the screen look really weird, and it actually continues to white out the screen. And because of that, it can be used for, like I said, a very, very just weird thing. And we just completely, if I just keep using it, as you can see, it just kind of keeps whiting out the screen. Just keeps going. Oh, interesting, there we go. Kind of escaped from it. Now we're kind of in the middle of nowhere. So there's FM. Kind of gets rid of all the background. It's interesting. Huh. Well, let's see what M does. Actually, no, we're not. I'm gonna reload. That's because this next one does something really cool. And if you've seen Missing No Experts Let's Glitch Pokemon Blue series, you'll see that this item does this. Which I thought was the coolest thing ever. I guess I should put a warning for anyone who has like epilepsy, but I'm sure it's okay. You'll know to look away. But I won't let that drag out for too long because it's just that. I will say though that it does last 34 seconds, just about. And this does work in battle too, which is pretty cool, according to Glitch City Laboratories. So now we're gonna move on. Yeah, this is an interesting item. It can be used similar to 8F and WSM from like Pokemon Yellow, but we're going to cover this in a later one, just because there's more to it than what we're going to see here. Okay, we're going to move on from what I like to call minus GM, or I don't know, dash GM, which, like I said, can be shown in a later video. And we'll get our first blob item here that's capable of doing some interesting stuff. Most notably, it can actually let us get into a Hall of Fame entry, but right now it's not going to work because it's another, you'll see on screen, like another arbitrary code execution thing. And it's not going to do much right now, like unless we have it set up when we come into here, which is pretty difficult, probably not even possible. You'll see another item from Missing Experts videos, and it doesn't do anything. It really doesn't do much, like honestly. It just does that. So we're going to move on. This item can kind of do some interesting stuff. Right now it's not really doing anything, but I'll show it later. As you can see, it's not doing anything. LGL. Sadly doesn't do much in here, but in Pokemon Yellow it does some pretty interesting stuff. We're going to move on now. Also going to save state. Okay, so with this one we're going to get -G, which is also a pretty interesting item, but it's just going to give an opcode right now. Alrighty, moving on from -G, we're going to get, I always love trying to say this one, QGNSL, I swear. And then it's like the little Pokemon Center like sprite in there. And this, as you'll see on screen when it does some interesting stuff. Apparently if we keep pressing this and we get lucky, we might be able to see something. But I'm not going to try that right now, and that's pretty much all it does, and it's not very helpful. So we're just going to move on. GNSL, well yeah, we'll crash the game. Any item that really does arbitrary code execution is just going to crash the game, like, over and over again, unless you have it set up properly. So that's why those items crash the way they do, or even give you an unopcode. I'm going to save state. Now we have Q semicolon MP, I like just calling it QMP, honestly. And it's going to be an opcode, not very fun. Alrighty, moving on. We'll get MP, which does this. This item I might show at a later time because it actually has a few different applications that I remember of. I think that's all it has for us. With that being the case, we're going to move on. Alrighty, so this tile here is special. It's our first unterminated name glitch item, which is why it has a long name. We'll see here in a second. Oh, I don't want to say it technically has a long name, but it has like an official name, but then it also can kind of add on to what it has, and that's why it has multiple lines of text. You can see here I keep pressing the button and it's just doing that. So this is DHNHIT4 and then 89N whatever. And then you can see at the bottom it's with the rival name, Weasel, which I think is funny. And with these items, it's a super glitch item technically, and this can do quite a few things. And it's also useful for quite a few things. If you remember, there's an item that I use similar to this, I believe, in Pokemon Yellow. But for now, we're just going to do this, and it's going to do that, which is kind of lame. And we're going to move on. So this next one here, I'm just going to call it Index 117, which is what it corresponds to, because it has kind of just a weird name that it's really just not much of a name, honestly. But it's also an unterminated name glitch item, and for that it does the same thing as the last one, I'm just going to call it. But the difference here in the name is like it's PC, and then Weasel, which I just think is so funny. Alrighty, so this one will not have that. You'll see on screen what it does, and it's just not going to do much here. Yeah, just crash. Okay, moving right along. We'll get 4. 4 can do some very interesting stuff too. It's also an unterminated name glitch item, or a super glitch item, which I'm going to refer to these now as super glitch items because they're easier to say. And it's just going to crash. But it can do some helpful stuff too. Moving on, we'll get what's called no name, because you can clearly see there's no name. It does this, which is pretty interesting. US. It just keeps resetting the music, but apparently I can back out, and it like reset. And then it does this weird stuff, and it does persist into here, and it changes certain characters, as you can see. I'm not going to go through that now. There's really no point. There's not much help to that. But it does this interesting effect. And you'll see on screen that it can be used for a couple other stuff too. And we'll show that at a later time. Alright, now we'll have index 121. The reason why I called it that is because I didn't want to put polka dollar, but that's pretty much what it is. And it's not very helpful. It just freezes the game, crashes the game. That's what it does. So we're going to move right along. Next one here. You'll see on screen what it does, but it's just going to crash. Now we have this one. You'll see what it does on screen now. And it'll crash the game. Probably because of what it does. We're going to move on. We'll have this one, which does have kind of a long name. You can see there's this 4HS. It's funny. And just kind of does that. Not very helpful. You think that's the case. But actually, it does this, just like 9F. So it is helpful. And maybe I'll show that at a later time. Anyway, we're going to move on. We're going to get index 125. It's also a super glitch item. It has a long name. I'm going to save a state here. And you can see it's kind of a mess. But then it does this, which is just crazy, in my opinion. For whatever reason, it does this effect. And so, can't fight. Items are all weird. Can't leave the item thing when we get stuck. This reminds me kind of what we encountered with something I showed in Pokemon Yellow. Now I'm stuck here, so I'm gonna reload. Try that again. Leader Metapod, the hooked Metapod, which is very infamous. The mascot of Glitch City Laboratories. So, something interesting here. Let's view the stats of Blastoise. About said Bulbasaur. Back out. And you'll see, he turns into Blastoise. It's kind of interesting. I can even do that with Venusaur. What's nice about that too is I'm pretty sure it's the right color for Venusaur, so it looks normal. So let's throw out Rhydon. Rhydon look pretty cool. Not throw out Rhydon, but check it out. Get a green Rhydon, which is pretty neat. We'll switch into Raichu, because why not? So let's try and fight this Metapod. Uh-oh, the P is like ding dong. Safari Balls. Goodbye, instant crash. Yeah, that's pretty lame. But yeah, that was a loud noise. We're gonna move on. So now, we're gonna get a similar item here. Let's get in the right spot. It has a long name too. And for that, I'm gonna save state once I get this pulled up. So for the name, you'll see it's a bunch of, I actually put like pound symbols, or what today is the hashtag symbol. You can see an A over there, and then it's like PC, 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 and that's pretty much it for the name. It does something pretty interesting. Pretty much the same thing, but slightly different. You can see the Metapod is a different color. It's that like default gray color. It gives the TM trainer effect. Besides that, it's pretty much the same, as far as I can tell. And does that, and then I would switch, because it consumes our turn, and I guess that's the reason why it like suddenly realizes that it's a problem, and PA ding dong. But this one, we can leave, which I thought was really interesting, and some weird stuff happens. You can see I can open that menu, but it's weird. This is something I might investigate more. We'll see, but right now we're just going to leave it at that. Alrighty, moving on to Index 127, which you might see why I named it that. It's another super glitch item, and just does that, so not very helpful. Moving on, we're going to get PC. Does that. Not very helpful. It's also a super glitch item. Now we have Index 129. See why I called it that. And Professor Oak won't let us do anything with it. And that's because it's actually treated as an Ultra Ball. There's a bit more to this item. It does some interesting stuff. I might show it at a later time because this might be able to be used in battle. And as far as I know, it can't be. That's why he says, oh, can't use this now. It has to be used in battle. Moving on to the next one. We'll have an item that's similar to that. I can't remember. Like, one was treated as like an Ultra Ball, one was treated as a Great Ball, Pokeball, and Master Ball. Is kind of what it roughly was. And so this next one, which is 131, just does the same thing, not very helpful. And now this one. Trade completed! It's the same thing. I can't remember. I think this is the, I think that was the Pokeball one. I don't remember. And then this one's too bad the trade was canceled, I think, or wasn't completed, or something like that. This one is a town map, which is kind of interesting. And I should say, let me go back really quick. Here, I believe. $129, super glitch item. PC was a super glitch item. This one is a super glitch item. This one's a super glitch item. But trade completed is not, and too bad the trade couldn't be completed, I believe is what it is it also a super glitch item. So trade completed is not. That's one thing I wanted to point out, just letting you know. So you can actually use this item here for that too, which is interesting, like that super glitch effect stuff. According to Glitch Save Laboratories, from what I saw, to reference them. And this will actually be the last item for us here. This little blob, which acts as a bicycle, which I think is kind of interesting. And for that, I'll show you one more thing before we go. So you can see this item right here corresponds to bicycle. This one here corresponds to the town map, roughly. And I believe the next one will show it off really briefly. I think this was like a surfing item. You see no surfing. So let's go all the way over here, because I didn't do this in yellow, and I kind of wish I did, so I'll do it here. Go all the way back. If you remember, I think B1F, yeah, okay. So I'll go over here. A little bit of hunting too. SS ticket. So here's like all the normal items. Crap. Soda pop. Fresh water, what's here? Coin, there it is. I was looking for that forever ago. And then, just to spoil it, I think it's right here actually. Oh no, we hit the wall. Crap. We don't want that. Okay, maybe we can keep going. So yeah, we're actually went back down to 0. There's the Pokeball town map, so that kind of works out. So there's a town map, you can see, boom. And then bicycle is on this tile, bicycle, and then this is the surfboard item. This is the functional surfboard item, I believe. There's actually 2 of them, and one works and one doesn't. And then we'll move on from there, Safari Ball and stuff like that. Pokedex, which I guess we'll end off on that, because why not? Pokedex was originally an item. Who knew? Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.